Alan takes a bite and immediately spits it out, because the taste is extremely unpleasant. He comments that fruits that grow on very tall trees are usually quite sour, and asks if she already knew that before making him taste something that did not even seem edible. Cecil assures him that she had no idea. Without prolonging the discussion, she says that now she wants something sweet to remove the bad taste from her mouth and decides that she needs to go to the market to make up for the situation. Before Alan can respond, the sky suddenly darkens. When he looks up, he sees a huge aircraft crossing the skies. Cecil does not understand his astonishment and explains that it is just a magical ship, something relatively common there. Even so, for Alan it is the first time he has seen something so impressive. He had already seen tools powered by magic stones, such as clocks and lamps, mentioned by Paloma, but nothing compared to that flying vessel. The following morning, Alan wakes up excited, commenting to himself that that place seems like a completely different world from the uncomfortable internet cafes where he used to sleep. The first thing he does is breathe in the aroma of a po, which helps him recover his magic points more quickly, reducing the recovery time from 6 to 5 hours. After that, he goes to breakfast and meets the head butler, Rickwell. Rickwell asks if he is getting along well with Cecil. Alan responds without much enthusiasm, remembering the difficulties she usually imposes. A certain compassion can be heard in Rickwell's voice when he comments that she would not demand so much if Alan were only a simple errand boy. Curious, Alan asks what exactly the difference is between an errand runner and an official servant, since no one had explained that clearly. Rickwell clarifies that among the servants of higher position are the butler, the keeper of the keys, the valet, the lady's companion, and the head chef. In lower positions are the coachman, the assistant cook, the gardener, the household employees, and the maids. All of these are considered part of the family. Errand boys, on the other hand, are merely temporary helpers who are not officially part of the household. Alan is surprised to learn that the servants are treated as members of the family. He finally understands why his father became so emotional when he was accepted there. Rickwell reminds him that the master of the house was very generous in integrating him, so he should value that opportunity. After breakfast, Alan helps serve the meal to the Graynell family. He notices that, despite the social differences, the nobility's food is not much more sophisticated than that of the employees. In silence, he observes while everyone eats. Graynell's wife comments that he learned the duties of a servant quickly. Alan politely thanks her, saying that he owes it to the patient teachings of his superiors. Verosa praises his posture and tells her husband that she likes the boy's manners. Graynell agrees, stating that even without talent, his manners are impressive. Alan is surprised to realize that Graynell already knew about his lack of talent, understanding that the man investigated his past. When Cecil discovers that he does not possess any special talent, she takes the opportunity to proudly say that she is a 2-star sorceress. Alan is genuinely impressed, since that is a high classification. She continues bragging, mentioning that her brother Mihai is a skilled swordsman. The grandmother soon scolds her, saying that it is not proper to boast about one's own gifts. Meanwhile, Thomas, the other brother, begins to cry, asking why he is the only one who does not possess any talent at all. The father tries to encourage him, explaining that he will be able to study at the nobles' school in the capital. Thomas replies that he would like to attend the city academy, as Mihai did. But the father explains that that institution is reserved only for those who have special talent. Graynell adds that he himself studied at the nobles' school, and that it was there that he met his wife and formed his family. Thomas accepts the situation with sadness, and Cecil notices that he is still downcast. Later, with the afternoon free, Alan decides to leave the mansion to visit the market. For him, it is an environment completely different from the village where he grew up. Excited, he decides to enter the Adventurers Guild. Without hesitation, he asks the receptionist if he can become an adventurer, informing her that he is 8 years old. She apologizes and explains that the minimum age for registration is 12 years old. Visibly disappointed, Alan does not give up on his dream of facing monsters, even while performing the role of servant out of respect for his father. He then decides to observe the reward posters fixed to the wall. He sees Level E missions for horned rabbits, Level B for goblins and giant frogs, Level C for orcs, and even special ants that reward 3 silver coins. At that moment, an adventurer named Raven approaches and says that that is no place for a child. Alan replies that he is already leaving, but takes the opportunity to ask why the posters do not indicate the exact locations where the monsters appear. Raven explains that these monsters can be found in several regions. He begins to grow impatient, asking since when he became Alan's teacher. Alan clarifies that he is only curious and wants to understand how the classifications work. Even reluctantly, Raven explains that the higher the monster's level, the farther from the city it usually appears. The most dangerous ones live near the White Dragon Mountains. Alan stores that information in his memory. As he continues observing the board, he sees a level B reward for a myrtle, worth 200 gold coins. It is a monster known as Mash, something that immediately catches his attention. After hearing the monster's name, Alan decides to ask one more question. He wants to know why no one accepts the mission, since the reward is so high and the poster even indicates the location. Raven explains that the target is extremely strong and incredibly fast, which makes it very dangerous. For that reason, the most appropriate course of action is to leave that kind of threat to the Order of Knights. Alan smiles faintly, realizing that Raven has already revealed a great deal of information. Even so, he takes the opportunity to ask about the white dragon mentioned on the board. Since the reward appears to have been there for a long time, Raven shows a certain weariness at so many questions, but Alan promises that he will leave as soon as he answers. He then explains that no one accepts that mission because the white dragon is far too powerful. However, in the White Dragon Mountains there are enormous deposits of mithril, an extremely rare and highly valuable metal. Many people wish to extract it, but as long as the dragon remains there, that is impossible. For that reason, the reward continues to increase over the decades. Upon hearing this, Alan quickly concludes that mithril must be worth more than 1,000 gold coins. Before he can continue the conversation, Raven's group Rita and Milsey approaches. They also notice Alan's dark hair and eyes, something uncommon. He simply explains that he was learning about monsters and thanks Raven before leaving the guild. He has already obtained almost all the information he wanted and now feels that he is ready to take the next step. As he leaves the city, the cold air hits him, but he does not intend to waste the day off that he earned with so much effort. A guard tries to stop him and asks for his travel authorization. Alan then shows the crest of the Grand Bell family, which grants him free entry and exit from the city. The gates open, and he runs toward the forest, determined to face as many monsters as he can. He has waited 8 years for that moment, but he knows he should not stray too far from the city. Since stronger monsters inhabit distant regions, he decides to hunt about 10 kilometers from the wall. Upon finding a suitable location, he begins by testing his summoned creatures. He orders Higgins to walk 1 meter to the right, and he obeys without difficulty. Since he has 150 intelligence, enough to understand simple commands. As he has not yet encountered any monsters, Alan concludes that the encounter rate is low. For that reason, he summons several Hawkins, believing it would be more efficient to let them search for targets. He orders them to use their keen vision ability to locate nearby monsters. Meanwhile, he summons Tama. Unlike Hawkins, Tama has only 28 intelligence, which makes understanding more complex orders difficult. Even so, Alan decides to test the dagger he received from Dagora, taking it out of his grimoire. Soon, Hawkins reports that he has found a monster nearby. Alan runs in the indicated direction, but begins to realize that he should have given more specific instructions, such as limiting the search area. Shortly after, he spots a group of goblins. He hides behind a tree, but is quickly detected. Without wasting time, he summons Tama 5 times and then 5 more times, completely surrounding the goblins. Since he can summon creatures at any point within a 50-meter radius that is within his field of vision, the strategy works well. He orders Tama to attack with his claws, and this time the tiger understands immediately. Despite the strong start, the goblins react. So Alan decides to change tactics and summons Papillon, who possesses the ability to induce sleep. The technique works, leaving several goblins asleep. He tries to attack them with stones, but realizes that the damage is not sufficient. So he lets Tama finish off the enemies. After defeating 5 goblins, Alan receives 1,000 experience points, which he considers excellent. He understands that efficiency is essential. Even if a goblin offers less experience than a giant boar, it can be defeated much more quickly, making the overall gain superior. After collecting the magic stones left behind by the monsters, he asks Hawkins to search for more groups of goblins within a 3-kilometer radius. Upon finding others, Alan repeats the strategy several times, accumulating experience until nightfall. By the end of the day, he has defeated 5 horned rabbits and 80 goblins, totaling 16,050 experience points and gaining 2 levels. During the battles, he also realizes that Papillon has about an 80% chance of inducing sleep in goblins, which demonstrates that even a single summoned creature can be extremely useful against large groups, depending on the right ability. He also learns more about magic stones. Rank D stones cannot be used to create rank E creatures, and the reverse does not work either. This means that there may be situations in which lower-level creatures are necessary. Determined to continue hunting, his routine begins to attract attention. The Baron summons him, praises his performance, and questions what he does on his days off, since he leaves at dawn and returns late. Pressured, Alan admits that he hunts magical creatures outside the city, justifying himself by saying he is Rodden's son and has it in his blood. The argument convinces the Baron. The tension rises when the Baron mentions the horned rabbit Alan has supposedly been raising, revealing that he has been under observation. The Master believes the boy is trying to domesticate beasts to sell meat illegally and advises him to stop. Alan clarifies that he only discards the carcasses. A profitable agreement then emerges. The Granbert family will buy each carcass for 1 silver coin. With official permission to hunt, Alan begins to profit in addition to gaining experience. He sets aggressive goals to slaughter at least 100 goblins and hunt horned hares to accumulate XP, magic stones, and money. During the hunt, his radar detects something moving far beyond the normal range. Upon investigating, he finds a trio from the guild cornered and gravely injured. Ilithy refuses to abandon her companions. Unable to reveal his summons, Alan decides to fight using only his own attribute. At level 12, with attack and speed above 300 points, he surpasses rank D monsters without magical assistance and neutralizes the main threats, leaving only a weakened goblin for the adventurers to finish off. Rave is on the verge of death, and the group has no magical power left to heal him. Rita falls into despair, but Alan uses the Herb of Life, a rare item generated by Mamatero. The effect is immediate. The bleeding stops and Rave stabilizes. Relief spreads through the group. Noticing that Rita is also injured, Alan hands her another herb. The adventurers are shocked to see something so valuable being used so casually. To them, it is a rare treasure. To Alan, it is merely a resource from his system, which he downplays as something common. Rave, now recovered, tries to formally thank Alan for saving the group, but the boy cuts off any attempt at ceremony. He says he is late to meet his daily hunting quota and does not want fame. As a condition for the rescue, he demands absolute silence about his identity and ability. In exchange, he accepts 100 level E magic stones. For the adventurers, it is an absurdly low price for their lives. For Alan, it is the ideal resource to sustain his summon. Raven promises to deliver the batch within a week. Alan turns the incident into a strategic analysis. He compares the Myra's flower, which was used to slowly heal his father Rodden, with the Herb of Life generated by Mamatero, which healed Rave instantly. He concludes that the herb works with fixed and immediate restoration, making it far more efficient in emergencies. He also notes that he received 160 experience points for the goblin defeated jointly, about 80% of the total value. Realizing that shared combat does not drastically reduce the gain, by the end of the day, he accumulates valuable information about healing and experience. The scene cuts to the dining hall, where everyone is gathered around the table. The noble guest shows great fascination as he tastes the meat being served. With each bite, his expression reveals surprise and satisfaction. He comments, impressed, that this was the meat Alan and his family used to hunt. He states that he expected nothing less from Rodden's son and mentions having heard that they had reached the goal of eliminating 20 boars. Upon hearing this, Alan feels extremely happy and proud. The boy, curious, asks why they were not eating boar that year, since it was traditionally one of the main highlights of the meals. Alan then recalls that the decision was the result of an order from the king, who had requested that all slaughtered boars be sent to the royal capital. Upon hearing the explanation, the boy shows irritation, questioning the fact that the servants in the capital were consuming more meat than the nobles themselves. However, his father quickly corrects him, asking him to show respect and reminding him that social position does not determine anyone's worth. Trying to shift the focus of the conversation, the boy asks Alan to hunt a white rabbit for him. Before any answer is given, the girl intervenes and tells him to speak with her before going around ordering Alan to do something. She makes it clear that he should not treat him as a subordinate. The atmosphere at the table becomes slightly tense, as everyone realizes that behind a simple dinner, issues of respect, authority, and coexistence are beginning to emerge. They discover that Alan may end up getting into trouble if the manager of Rinnen finds out about certain movements that have been happening behind the scenes. There are discreet comments, worried glances, and advice given in low tones. He listens to all the warnings with apparent attention, but in the end, he simply decides to ignore them. Instead of stepping back or acting cautiously, he casually announces that he is going to hunt a white deer, a rank C monster, at the same level as the python they had faced previously. For him, it is not recklessness, but a test of skill, a way to measure his own growth. The scene cuts to the forest. Alan advances calmly, with firm steps and controlled breathing. He observes the movement of the leaves, listens to the distant sound of branches breaking, and feels the change in the density of the air. When he finally finds the target, he does not attack immediately. He analyzes the terrain, measures the distance, and only then summons Pionto and the other spirits. The strategy is clear from the beginning: provoke, retreat, and strike at the right moment, wearing down the enemy before the final blow. He coordinates the summoned beasts with impressive precision. He advances, calls them back, repositions them within seconds. He can only do this because he completely masters the special abilities of each creature. Without that absolute control, any mistake would mean losing the encirclement. The white deer is gradually pressured. Surrounded on all sides, it tries to react but finds no real opening. Then it ends up falling into the pit that had been created, and thus the battle comes to an end. The capture is clean and efficient, with no waste of energy. The scene shifts to the castle. An uproar begins when a massive demonic beast appears carrying the slain deer. Guards panic, some even shout that a demon is invading the gates. Weapons are raised, orders are shouted. The tension only decreases when they explain that everything happened under the orders of young Master Thomas. The white deer had been captured specifically for the New Year's banquet. The family is impressed by the feat. Comments of surprise and approval spread throughout the hall. Alan, on the other hand, keeps a neutral expression. He received 2,500 experience points for the hunt, but considers it little for the effort and preparation involved. Internally, he decides that he does not intend to repeat something like that frequently if the return continues at that level. Sebas then raises another important issue. How did someone so young manage to purchase and control a rank C magical beast? They say Alan has no special talent, but the facts begin to contradict that narrative with each new result. The answer comes in the form of official recognition. Alan receives a new position, Hunting Guard. The role is simple and direct: to hunt magical beasts to supply meat to the castle and protect residents attacked by monsters in the surrounding areas. In return, he will have a fixed salary of 100 silver coins per month. For him, it is perfect. Now he can hunt monsters as part of his official duties without needing to act in secret. There is, however, one condition. He will continue serving Lady Cecil as a priority and will only be allowed to act as a hunting guard once a week. Alan tries to hide his frustration. On the inside, he would like to go out hunting every day, accumulating experience without interruptions. On the outside, he accepts with a smile, like the exemplary servant everyone expects to see. Later, the scene shows Cecil returning to the castle. Now 14 years old, she appears more mature, with a more confident posture and a firmer gaze. She complains that he promised to return during the summer vacation and did not show up. He apologizes immediately and explains that he was clearing dungeons as a mandatory task from the academy. If he failed to meet the required quotas, he could be expelled. The scene cuts to everyone already at home. As the days pass, Alan keeps hunting various rank sea monsters and selling them to the family. Everyone is quite impressed by the achievement, and Mihai decides to challenge Alan to a duel. Alan calculates quickly. He rose from level 13 to level 20 thanks to the weekly hunts and constant training. He believes he can win, but he knows it will not be easy. The duel begins. Mihai is fast and technical, his strikes precise and well calculated. Alan blocks heavy attacks using only one hand. Testing his limits, he observes his opponent's speed, measures strength, adjusts his stance as needed. The audience watches in silence, surprised by the balance of the confrontation. Mihai has improved a great deal. Even so, Alan keeps up with the pace without showing fatigue. At the decisive moment, Mihai identifies a minimal opening in the defense and acts without hesitation. The final strike is clean. Alan accepts the defeat without excuses. He acknowledges the difference and says he wants a rematch next summer. Mihai agrees, but makes a simple request in return, that Alan take good care of Cecil while they are in the academic city. The agreement is sealed with mutual respect. Days later, Mihai returns to the academic city, the same destination Kirina, Dogora, and Cecil will follow one day. The scene shifts to a meeting between noble families. Lord Carnal visits the Granbell family in a formal gathering, surrounded by etiquette and rigid protocols. At first glance, the conversation revolves around boar meat, recent harvests, and typical formalities between neighboring territories. Restrained smiles, measured compliments. But the real subject is another, Mithril. There is a deposit in the White Dragon Mountains, located exactly on the border between the two territories. The ore is far too valuable to be ignored. The problem is that a white dragon has settled precisely on the side controlled by the Granbell family, preventing any attempt at safe mining. No worker dares approach while the creature remains there. 100 years ago, the situation was the opposite. At that time, the dragon occupied carnal territory, blocking their extraction, an old cycle that now repeats itself, as if the mountain itself were testing the patience of both houses. And this time, the decision they make may alter the balance between them for a long time. The visit also brings another delicate issue besides Mithril, the talent ceremony. One of the sons did not awaken magical talent, and among nobles, that is far from a minor detail. Having talent can mean immediate prestige, political influence, and military power in the future. It can also generate internal disputes, silent comparisons, and dangerous expectations within the family itself. The tension lingers in the air during the formal conversation. Even though no one mentions the matter directly, smiles remain present, but they are restrained. Every word is carefully measured. The scene cuts to Alan on his day off. With no immediate obligations at the castle, he meets his adventurer friends to ask for help with armor and similar matters. He decides to hunt farther than usual. He has eliminated around 10,000 goblins over the past months. Rank D monsters have ceased to be efficient for his growth. The experience gained is far too small for the effort involved. Now he wants to face something greater. C-rank creatures. He knows that experienced adventurers can die facing a single enemy of that level. It is not a light step. Before leaving, he buys light armor designed not to restrict his movements. He adjusts each buckle carefully. In the forest, the air feels heavier as he advances. After some time, he finds the first target, a C-rank orc. The creature's presence is imposing. Alan summons his creatures without hesitation. Unlike ordinary beasts, summons do not tire or hesitate. The battle is direct, intense, without unnecessary flourishes. He maintains control of the field, adjusts positions, creates openings. The confrontation is harsh, but it ends in victory. He obtains the magical stone without needing to resort to tricks or complex traps. The conclusion is clear. He can now defeat enemies of that level alone. But the sense of accomplishment does not last long. An even more threatening adversary emerges from the shadows of the forest. Heavy armor covers almost his entire body. Absurd strength can be felt with every step he takes. Alan remembers what Raven once said. He had nearly died facing a similar group. The memory serves as a warning. He attempts a direct attack. It does not work. The enemy's defense is far too solid. The impact echoes through Alan's arm, but it does not pierce the protection. He changes his strategy in the middle of the fight. He stops focusing only on the physical body and begins aiming at the magical stone as the decisive point. If he cannot overcome the armor externally, he must strike the core. The battle becomes risky. Every approach is a real danger. By a narrow margin, a very narrow margin, he finds the necessary opening and wins. As he catches his breath, he realizes something important. Physical attacks are not enough against certain opponents. Strength and technique have limits. Perhaps he needs magic. His intelligence is high. In theory, he could learn. The scene shifts again. Alan seeks out Professor Arlen and asks directly whether he can use magic even without apparent talent. The answer is cold, almost automatic. Without talent, there is no magic. They ask him to place his hand on the official test once more as confirmation. Nothing shines. No sign, no reaction. The result is confirmed without room for doubt. Alan understands the reality. As a summoner without magical talent, traditional magic is not an option for him, and that realization weighs more heavily than any battle wound. It is not physical pain. It is limitation. In an almost trivial moment, someone tells him to eat a cookie, as if that could ease the atmosphere or resolve the frustration. The city plunges into panic when news spreads that a monster known as the Killer Boy is rapidly approaching. The warning first reaches the watch posts and, within a few minutes, begins to spread through the streets like wildfire. One of the guards confirms the information with urgency. The creature was seen advancing at high speed, and, if it continues at that pace, it should reach the southern port in less than 2 hours. The situation becomes even more troubling for another reason. Zeroth, the most powerful commander of the city guard, is away on a mission and will only return in 2 days. Without him, the military strength of the city is clearly weakened. With no other alternative, an immediate order is given by the remaining officers. The Adventurers Guild must be summoned to help with the defense while the residents are evacuated as quickly as possible. Messengers run through the streets, warning bells begin to ring, and merchants hurriedly close their stalls. Every minute becomes precious. Alan listens to the entire conversation attentively while observing the movement around him. After a few moments of silence, he makes his decision. He will also participate in the battle. Cecil immediately tries to stop him. She reminds him that he is her personal guard and that his priority should be protecting her, not running toward danger. To her, losing Alan in a reckless battle would be unacceptable. Even so, he keeps a firm posture. He explains that he also has responsibilities to the Granverge family and cannot simply ignore a threat that puts the entire city at risk. The monster has been classified as rank B, something far above the average of the adventurers who live in that city. Many of those present understand what that means. Facing a creature of that level can easily result in deaths. Even so, Alan advances determined to confront it. The battle begins in a chaotic manner. The creature invades the area near the port with violence, destroying structures and attacking everything it finds in its path. Its movements are far too fast for ordinary guards to react properly. Desperation grows when they realize that there are still civilians trapped in the monster's path. Some people did not manage to evacuate in time and are now running through the streets trying to escape. While the adventurers try to divert it away from the city and protect the survivors, Alan takes the front line. He provokes the creature, draws its attention, and forces the monster to focus its attacks on him. The fight drags on for a long time. The enemy is fast and possesses impressive endurance. Every strike Alan lands seems to slow the creature for only a few seconds. Even using several abilities and summons to weaken it, he quickly realizes that defeating it will not be simple. Even so, he keeps fighting. Step by step, blow after blow, Alan leads the monster farther and farther away from the city. His strategy is not only to win, but to buy time. The farther away the battle takes place, the greater the chances that everyone will escape. After an extremely exhausting confrontation, which seems to stretch far beyond the normal physical limit, he finally manages to shake off the creature. However, shortly after the victory, completely exhausted, Alan loses consciousness and collapses at the scene. When he wakes up again, he finds Aegeia by his side. She is clearly irritated that he put himself in so much danger. Her eyes show frustration, but also evident relief when she realizes that he survived. Alan then explains what really happened. The monster was not defeated immediately. After leaving the city, the creature continued chasing Alan for 3 entire days. During all that time, he fought, retreated, and provoked the enemy repeatedly, always maintaining enough distance to prevent the monster from returning to the urban area. Only after that long confrontation did he finally manage to defeat it once and for all. Later, once he has recovered enough to present himself before the authorities, Alan delivers a complete report to those responsible for the city's defense. He describes the course of the battle, the decisions he made, and the risks involved. Even though he did not eliminate the creature immediately, his effort was essential to saving many lives, since he prevented the monster from returning to the city and continuing the massacre. As recognition for his feat, Alan receives a generous reward, several payment letters, and official recognition from the city. With the money in hand, he already begins to consider the possibility of buying a sword made of mithril. The scene then cuts to focus on the training of summoners and the functioning of summons. They explain that the information of the creatures can be updated as they evolve, and that the greater the number of summons a summoner possesses, the greater his potential strength can become. Alan draws a great deal of attention because of his accelerated growth. In just 6 months, he defeated around 2,000 enemies and reached level 28, something considered impressive in such a short time. The scene cuts to Alan training with a sword alongside the boy. After spending quite a long time practicing, he ends up losing once again. The scene then shifts back to all of them having dinner together. While they are discussing the subject, new urgent information arrives. A powerful trap apparently moved from its previous location. An adventurer claims to have seen this creature near Lake Carnal. If that information is true, capturing that trap could offer an enormous strategic advantage. In addition, it might be the ideal opportunity to create a new Rank B trap and strengthen the forces of the region even further. Zirafu then receives a new mission: investigate the supposed trap that appeared near Lake Carnal. Before anything else, he must confirm the exact location of the creature. After that, he will have to search through 4 different regions to discover what is truly happening in that area. The situation is far too dangerous. Besides the possible trap in Lake Carnal, there is also an orc village in the region and another Rank B monster nearby. The investigation alone could take more than a month. Unable to participate, Alan accepts the decision. But deep down he is not satisfied at all. If that trap begins defeating other monsters in the region, he could lose a great opportunity to gain experience. Because of that, he decides to train on his own. Already far from the city, he realizes that he still has plenty of magical energy available and decides to take advantage of it to test his abilities more thoroughly. His attributes have improved significantly. His summoning level has reached level 5. His endurance has also increased, and his expansion ability is already at level 4. In addition, he recently acquired an ability related to dinosaurs. Raising the level of that ability took more than 2 years, so now he wants to fully understand what it is capable of doing. First, he tests the expansion ability again and confirms that he can control several units at the same time. After that, he decides to try something different, sharing abilities with his summons. For the test, he chooses Hulk. Suddenly, something unexpected happens. Mihai's vision changes completely. Now he can also see through the creature's eyes. It is as if he were controlling 2 bodies at the same time. Excited by the result, he decides to expand the experiment and summons more Hulks. When he shares the ability with all of them, he begins to see from 5 different points simultaneously. His mind starts functioning differently, almost as if he were dividing his own thoughts to control several perspectives at once. But there is a limit. When Mihai tries to share the ability with a 6th creature, an intense pain appears in his head, as if his own body were being pushed beyond what it can endure. He immediately stops the test, realizing that something is wrong. Thinking calmly, he begins to analyze the reason for that limitation. After reflecting for a while, he reaches a possible conclusion. The limit is probably linked to the intelligence attribute. With the current level of that attribute, he can control only 5 units at the same time. To confirm his theory, he decides to conduct another experiment. Mihai then increases his intelligence attribute and, shortly afterward, tries once again to share the ability with another summon. This time, the result is different. He manages to connect the ability with a sixth creature without feeling the same intense pain as before. Now the situation begins to get interesting. With this new capacity, he starts experimenting with several strategies. Mihai summons multiple rank D creatures to test different formations and combat tactics. Among them, a rank D spider catches his attention. In addition to its own abilities, it possesses a strengthening effect that can improve the performance of the other summons. While continuing his tests, he discovers something even more important, a magic recovery ability. This discovery completely changes his way of fighting. With mana regeneration, Mihai now has far more freedom during battles. Now he can keep his summons active for much longer and use abilities far more frequently without worrying so much about exhausting his magical energy. Hawk and the other summons take on specific roles, acting mainly as support and also as means of transportation when necessary. Observing the rapid growth of his abilities, Mihai realizes that his possibilities are increasing at an impressive speed. This excites him greatly. But at the same time it awakens a certain fear about how far this power might take him. He decides to visit his family with his bird, and there he sees Kiku Kirina from the moment she appeared calling out to him. His bird allows him to see his mother. The emotion of that moment still remains alive in his heart. The scene shifts to two men having a conversation. One of them begins by congratulating everyone for the work accomplished over the last 6 months. However, not everything is good news. During the long period in which the mines remained inactive, they ended up turning into true nests of monsters. And the problem does not end there. The nearby villages, which once operated as mithril refineries, were also invaded and are now occupied by orcs and goblins. One of the men comments that he would like to put the closest mine back into operation, but asks how long it would take for that to happen. The other replies that the process would take around 3 years. Upon hearing that, the first man shows his dissatisfaction, saying that this deadline is far too long and that it would be better to speed up the work as much as possible. Soon after, they change the subject and begin talking about what Viscount Karnal has been doing lately. According to the information they received, he tried to force the advancement of the mining operations. However, that decision ended up attracting the fury of a white dragon. They say that in a single instant, all the miners who were working there were reduced to ashes. Now no one knows for sure what the Viscount's next step will be, since his mines will need to remain closed for quite some time. Because of this, everyone agrees that it is better to act with great caution. Faced with this situation, they make a decision to summon the knights to eliminate all the monsters occupying the mines and the nearby regions. Meanwhile, Alan observes everything and begins to reflect in silence. For him, the time to act has finally arrived. Shortly afterward, a message appears in front of him informing him that he defeated an orc and received 15,000 experience points. Alan realizes that during the last 6 months he managed to take great advantage of the opportunities to grow stronger. He remembers that when he turns 12 years old, he will leave Gravellies to follow the path of an adventurer. There are still 2 years left until that moment arrives, and he intends to use that time to become stronger and repay everything he has received. If the monsters in that settlement were not eliminated soon, they would begin to multiply again. To Alan, the situation resembled a game. In the past, when he spent hours playing video games, it was enough to repeat the same hunting area to accumulate experience, but that was not a game. Those monsters devoured real people. Realizing the danger, he decided that he would not allow that to continue. As long as those creatures existed, more victims would appear. So he made a simple decision: exterminate all of them. The battle started quickly. The enemies tried to escape, but it was already too late. The escape route was blocked. For Alan, it was like facing a stage that he knew he could clear. Before long, he found the leader of the horde, the Goblin King. Even though he was the chief of the group, he did not represent a major threat. Alan and his allies had already defeated thousands of monsters of the same level. When the fight ended, the result appeared clearly. In that entire village, he had eliminated 223 goblins and received 48,800 experience points. The amount seemed low for so much effort. Even so, it was part of the plan. For a while, he would continue destroying goblin villages that attacked humans. At some point, he would eventually reach an orc village ruled by an orc king. Meanwhile, the story shifts to the Granbell family. Cecil had already turned 10 years old. Alan was also there, and something about him seemed different. With the end of the so-called age correction, his attributes could now be read easily, and the numbers showed how much he had evolved. During training, Cecil decided to fight seriously against Alan. The two immediately began the duel. Cecil was much faster than he had been the previous year and believed that he would win this time. At first it seemed possible, since his speed had increased significantly. However, Alan continued predicting every movement. No matter what attack came, he already seemed to know what would happen next. Even while trying his absolute best, Alan could not surpass the boy. At the end of the fight, he realized the truth. He had not lost only because of speed. The boy's strength was also superior. Despite all his effort, he was defeated once again. Alan watched the scene with satisfaction. Those 3 years of school training had greatly improved Mihai's abilities. The father also recognized that, even so, everyone knew that Mihai was still on another level. The conversation continued, and Cecil commented that he wanted to learn swordsmanship directly from his older brother. Mihai did not object. On the contrary, he said that he would be happy to help. Even Alan considered learning as well. That was when Mihai brought unexpected news. He announced that he had received a noble mission. Because of that, he would be away from home for quite a long time. The revelation caught everyone by surprise. When they asked about the details of the mission, he explained that he could not reveal anything. The only thing he said was even more shocking. He would depart the very next day. Cecil was devastated. She had hoped to live beside her brother again. Mihai tried to calm her, promising that he would return after 3 years. Even so, for Cecil that time felt far too long. Despite the sadness, the family knew that noble duties could not be refused. The name Granbell carried responsibilities. In the end, Cecil accepted the situation and promised that she would wait for her brother's return. Before leaving, Mihai received one last instruction from his father. He asked Mihai to take care of Cecil and Alan and to protect them. Mihai replied that he would do whatever was necessary. Now he would depart to fulfill his obligations as a member of the Granbell family. Months later, Alan continued his hunt against monsters. In 6 months he had destroyed all the goblin villages in the region and reached level 35. Now the next stage of the plan arrived, attacking an orc village. The operation began with caution. The improvements in Harami's evasion abilities were working well, allowing them to face enemies directly. Braun also proved to be extremely useful during the battle. Even without knowing how much damage his summoned creatures could still withstand, Alan trusted them. The problem was that these summons fought until their limit, and, when they reached the maximum amount of damage, they simply disappeared suddenly. To deal with the enemy archers, Alan summoned 2 fighter creatures and ordered them to eliminate the threats from a distance. With that, the group advanced. The resistance was greater than he expected. There were around 200 enemies in the village. Even so, the experience points began to rise quickly as the monsters fell. The plan seemed to work. Although the battle lasted longer than those against goblins, suddenly, something unexpected happened. A magical explosion appeared on the battlefield. Alan realized immediately. Magic was involved. Soon the true leader of the place appeared. It was not just an ordinary boss. It was an orc king, and together with him there were magic users. That was the first time Alan witnessed real magic in that world, something that he himself could not even use. Instead of frightening him, it awakened his excitement. The gamer spirit inside him began to boil. Even so, the situation worsened quickly. There were enemies attacking points where his summons were not present. The orcs showed tactical intelligence. Some attacks came from positions where his iron balls could not reach. The battle turned into a war of attrition. There were still about 100 enemies remaining. To continue fighting, Alan decided to abandon part of his defense and use all available resources. He had many level D magic stones and could summon thousands of bears if necessary. Alan used his summons and magical fruits to keep the magic active, while facing a large group of orcs. However, the situation changed when the Orc King appeared. Much stronger, he destroyed several summons with ease. proving himself to be a rank B enemy. Alan tried to respond by creating and strengthening new creatures, but the summoning speed was not enough and the range of the attacks made it difficult to hit the boss. During the fight, Braun was injured, and Alan realized that he would not have enough power to maintain the spells and defeat the enemy at the same time. When the situation seemed lost, the commander of the Knights Xenof, known as the Demon of Battle, arrived on the battlefield and entered the confrontation against the Orc King. His strength was impressive, defeating powerful enemies with extreme ease. During the battle, Alan noticed that the knights were focusing on the magical orcs, the ones responsible for magic and for the long-distance attacks. After the fight, Xenof spoke with Alan and revealed that he suspected his secret hunts, since several magical beasts had been found without their magic stones. Even so, he did not accuse him and showed respect for his talent, asking only that Alan share information about the progress in the elimination of monsters. Later, Alan reviewed his combat strategy. His plan was to use 40 summoned bears to pressure the orcs from all sides, eliminate the magical orcs first, and win through numerical advantage. As long as he himself was not struck directly, Alan realized that attacking orc villages was worth far more experience than fighting goblins around 335,000 points, more than 7 times the value. Even if he failed, he saw the situation like a player, learn from each attempt to improve the next one. Meanwhile, at the Granbell family mansion, a messenger from the royal family arrives bringing Mihai's diary and devastating news. Mihai fulfilled his duty as a noble, but died during the mission. The news shocks the family. The father suspects that, because they are low-ranking nobles, Mihai may have been sent on an extremely dangerous mission. But the messenger reacts coldly and leaves. Cecil remembers her brother's last words. When he asked them to take care of Alan, she begins to believe that Mihai already knew he might die. Furious, she confronts her father, but receives a harsh response. Nobles exist to fulfill duties, even if that means dying. Unable to accept that reality, Cecil isolates herself and eventually disappears from the mansion. While the servants begin desperate searches, she reflects alone about her brother's death and about the cruel fate of nobles. Despite the pain, she reaches a conclusion. She wants to protect the people she loves, even if that means facing suffering or risking her own life to change that fate.